Hello and welcome back to another video. Debit is here with us. He is under the table. He might be joining us shortly. Anyway, today we're going to talk about color film because I do shoot a lot of film aside from my digital stuff. I kind of do it. It's fun. It's on the side. I personally don't do it exclusively. Like, I shoot a lot of digital more than film really, but I know that lots of people do. And it's getting more and more popular every day, so I figured we should talk about it. I have about 10 or 11 different types of film to talk about. I have about 7 of them in this bag. The others I don't actually have, but for every film that I do talk about, or at least that I've shot and do talk about in this video, I will have pictures coming up. Since I can't go outside and take them, you won't actually be able to see the footage. These are just pictures that I've taken a while ago, but it'll let you see what I'm talking about for each film. So we're gonna start off with Fuji C200, which is a very basic consumer film. It's nice, it's very neutral, it's kind of what you would say like a very inoffensive film. It's not trying to do anything too hard. The grain on it is quite mild, it's not super grainy, it's good like just for general use. I wouldn't say it has a specific purpose. I use it, I think it's like a nice film to put in point and shoots. I don't use it too often with SLRs because I just like slightly nicer film in them. It's also not my go-to consumer film. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But I do find that with all Fujis, and this is a little funny I find, is that I think all the Fujis tend to be a little bit green and all the Kodaks tend to be a little bit warm or yellow, and I find that funny because I think maybe it's just the packaging, because the Fuji's packaged in green, the Kodaks are packaged in like a very nice bright yellow, but every time I've shot them I've always felt like the Kodaks are nice and warmer in the shadows, but the Fujis are greener in the shadows. But you'll see in the pictures and you can tell me what you feel about that. But yeah, so Fuji C200 is like a good snapshot film, something you can just put in, you know, a point and shoot and use. It's good with flash, it looks good overall. I would say it's a good option if you don't have anything else or if you're just looking for something cheap. But I would say if you're looking for a good value film, the best cheap option in my opinion is ColorPlus. I use it all the time. It is my go-to cheap film. It's very nice. It's very similar to Kodak Gold, which is a slightly better version of this, I think, or at least it feels like they're very similar. Kodak Gold is marketed as slightly upper end than this. This is more consumer and it's really nice. It's nice and warm, it looks good. It's really got a very good snapshot aesthetic going for it. Like, I love putting this in point and shoots and getting, you know, it's just like the flash really brings out, it just feels like a very good saturated, like not too saturated but more so than the C200. It's nice and saturated, it gets like a nice yellow tint, which is like, it just works. I think it works really well, especially in the daylight and in almost all settings. That's my general purpose film. Yeah, ColorPlus, would recommend. Also it's not too grainy. But yeah, moving on. Let's talk about Superias. Now, we're getting into like, these two films aren't super saturated. They're nice for regular stuff, but if you really like very punchy colors, you get some of that with ColorPlus, but you really get it when you start shooting something like Superia, which is another Fuji film. Superia comes in 400 and 800, and nowadays, like, I see Superia Xtra, I don't see like anything else, but I think the Xtra is nicer. It says on the box that it has like a 4th color layer, and honestly, like, I've shot some Superia. I prefer the 800, but I think that's discontinued. So the 400 is really nice too. It's nice. It is a little bit more, it is a little grainier than C200 and ColorPlus, which are both 200 films. But if you're looking for something that's really nice and saturated, but isn't as expensive as something like Ektar, which is really fine grain, this is a lot grainier, but it is very, very nice. The colors are beautiful. I love it to bits. Also still has a little bit of that greenness from Fuji, but I think this is a much better job handling it. It is the closest thing, I would say, to my personal favorite film, which I'm going to talk about next. But the slight disclaimer about that one is that it's currently discontinued, so you can't really buy this specifically. It's Agfa Vista 200. I have 4 rolls stocked in my fridge, and I'm waiting for special occasions to use them. I don't know what I'm waiting for personally, but I don't want to use one and then be like, oh no, I only have 3 more rolls. So we'll see. We'll see when I use this next, but I love it so much. Agfa Vista 200, Agfa Vista Plus 200. It's really nice. It is, in my opinion, like a very hyper saturated film. Like, it's, when you shoot it, you'll see colors, but it does a thing. Okay, and here's another thing back to like the packaging, because Agfa Vista is super red. It's extremely red. You probably can't see it against my like shirt here, but the box for this is also red. And I don't know if that influences me, but every time I see an Agfa Vista photo, it's just so red. The highlights are red, the shadows are red. It's just a crazy film. It is, in my opinion, the most snapshotty of these films. Like, it's the one that looks like it best in a point and shoot with flash. It just looks like someone popped it out in the middle of a party and took pictures with it, even though you'd be shooting anytime. It's just such a strangely red film, but I love it so much. It's, in my opinion, it's just such a good feeling film that I would say that like it makes up for its shortcomings in its color rendition. It's a bit too red, sure, but yeah. So all of the films that we just talked about are daylight balanced. They are meant to get accurate colors shot in sunlight, but when you shoot them indoors, you're going to see slight changes. You're also going to see slight changes when you use flash. Flash is white. It will make everything look a little bit whiter. That's just something to think about if you don't know about that. While I'm here, I should also say, like, as much as I love the feel of this, it's discontinued, but there are some options still, because the film that is packaged as Agfa Vista film was something that was produced by Fujifilm, and since they reduced their film production in the last few years, they cut out Agfa Vista. I've heard many rumors as to what it might be. I know that there are still Agfa branded disposable cameras that they sell, and I've shot one and I think it does look really like nice. It looks a lot like Vista, so I would be inclined to believe that it is the same film. But I compared it to some disposable film, like a film disposable that Fuji makes, and I took the film out of both and I looked at the markings and they looked exactly the same. So it might just be that there is still a Fuji film that they're making that is very similar to Agfa, or they're just using the same one for all the disposables. So a Fuji disposable or the Agfa disposables have something that's very similar to Agfa Vista, and I also find that Superia does quite a similar job. Hi, David. Let's come over here. Come on. Okay, good job. So yeah, Superia 400 is similar in color rendition, but it's not as red. But you know, it's the best we can do to get the Agfa Vista colors so far. Another film that has really nice saturated punchy colors, but isn't too expensive and also isn't too grainy is the Lomo Color 100. I've only shot one roll of this ever, but I really did enjoy it when I did. So I would recommend it. If it's something you haven't tried, you should go out and get it. It doesn't have too much of a strong profile or anything that I would say, but it's got like some good color reproduction. I'm gonna take a break from the ones in this box to talk about Cinestill 800T. There are two types of Cinestill. There's 800T, which is tungsten balanced, and 800 speed. And there's 50D, which is the daylight balanced ISO 50 film. I have a roll of 50D, but I've never shot it, so I can't really speak to that one, but you know, I might do a first look and a review when I actually do get around to shooting it, and I can shoot the footage from the GoPro. But for 800T, which is the tungsten balanced and more popular, I would say, Cinestill film, I have shot it and it is nice, but I've never really enjoyed it too much because it's got a niche. You really have to shoot it indoors or just at night. You need, like, it looks good for things like neon lights because it's tungsten balanced, meaning it's balanced for the much cooler tungsten light than it is for daylight. Shooting it in daylight, you'll get some interesting shots. You'll see some at the end of this because I have shot it in daylight, and I'm not a fan of how it looks in daylight, and since I do most of my shooting in daylight, I don't really recommend it, but it is nice to try out and see if you like it. It does have a good look, but it's really only for nighttime or lots of neon lights, in my opinion. But yeah, you know, it's also not too grainy, so that's nice. And it's got like that, it's got a good characteristic. It's a respooled version of Kodak Vision, which is a movie film. So yeah, if you're into like how some movies look, it is worth a try. And we're gonna now talk about the other specialty film that I have, which is Lomochrome Purple, which is really, really cool. I would highly recommend you try it because it's such a nice, interesting effect. But the way Lomochrome Purple works is if there used to be a surveillance film called Aerochrome, which used to turn vegetation, like just the color green, to a very bright pink purple color, and this is just a modern day recreation of that. It's really cool. It takes colors and does a crazy shift, so I think on the back it should have exactly what it does. Well, I know that it turns greens into like a purple color, hence the name. It also turns like blues into a teal, so it's really cool for getting pictures of foliage or of the sky. But I find that it also has the same effect on practically everything, so skin colors, everything really gets affected by the purpleness. So it's a very nice deep purple film, and I've used two formulations of it. So this is the 2019 formula. It is nice. It is less crazy on the skin. The original formula was really, really like powerful everywhere. This new one is a little bit more toned down, but you really see it in the grass and in the trees. You don't see it so much on skin anymore. But it's also got a very interesting ISO on it because it says 100 to 400 on the box, which means you can actually choose where you want to shoot it, and each setting gives you a slightly different strength for the effect. I think 400 is the only place I've shot it, but I will give it a try at 100 and see what it looks like then. But yeah, highly recommend. It is a little expensive. It's just like Cinestill, I guess, in prices. I'm not sure. I haven't bought any in a while. It is a little harder to come by sometimes. You have to, I think, order it online from Lomography or just get really lucky with the place that stocks it. If you can ever see some, if you ever see some, get some. I recommend it. It's really nice. If nothing else, it'll give you a really cool effect for some pictures. But yeah, you know, it's like, it's nice. It's got very, you know, the grain isn't too bad or anything. I never noticed it. I thought it was nice. In fact, on most films I shoot, I don't really notice the grain too bad. Only when I shot the Superia 800 was it entirely obvious that there was grain, but even then it didn't really affect it too much. Now we're going to talk about the high-end films. So we're going to talk about Portra, which is the classic portrait and neutral film. It is very nice, no doubt. If you're looking for a film that almost basically looks like it's been shot on digital but still has that film quality about it, I would say go for Portra. Comes in 160, 400, and 800. I've only shot, I think, 160 and 400. I will get around to 800 at some point, but my recommendation is to go with 400. It is the nicest of the three, because 160 I feel like is almost too digital looking. It's too perfect to film. It's very fine grain. It just looks really nice. Oh, there's David. He's back. But yeah, you know, it's very nice neutral colors, very good for skin tones. It's just such a good all-round film. You won't get saturation out of it, so if that's what you're looking for, it's not your best friend. But it is definitely the go-to general purpose high-end film. The Fuji alternative to Portra is Pro 400H, which is also made for portraits. It's very nice, it's very neutral, and it's got like a nice soft contrast, nothing too harsh. What I will say though is 400H does a really good job with foliage. It's again with the Fujis and the greens, they do a much better job reproducing them than Kodak in my opinion, and 400H does a really good job at getting your plants and things to look really good. So yeah, and I think the last one to really talk about is Ektar. Ektar 100 is the color film. It is what you want for... Okay, yeah, sure. Hi, David. Yeah, so Ektar 100 is... You know, it's the perfect color film in my opinion. It is nice, very saturated, very nice colors, very accurate representation of colors. Just like very accurate in the sense that it captures all the colors very nice. It does saturate them a touch. I would not like, it's not recommended to use for portraits, but I have used it for portraits once or twice, and I kind of like how it looks. So I think you should definitely try it out and make your own just opinion about whether or not you like it for portraits. I find that Ektar just is like the film to go for if you're only looking to reproduce colors, not skin tones or anything else. So I wouldn't necessarily use it so much for people, but you can. I find that it's got a little bit of like a pinkness in the shadows, and it's just anytime you've got a very bright, colorful scene, it is the film to go for. It's also extremely fine grained. It is a 100 ISO film, but it looks like there isn't anything there. It's just fantastic. It's really, really well made. Highly recommend. It is also a little bit expensive, so that's why I don't use it like on a regular basis. I finally got around to shooting some last year, and it was just fantastic. What a lovely film Ektar is. But you know, it's expensive, so I wouldn't recommend it all the time. So going back through what we've seen and what I recommend, Lomo 100 is nice if you're looking for something saturated that isn't too high grain. Agfa Vista is my favorite of all time, but discontinued. Portra 400 is your go-to for nice, neutral, natural skin tone colors. It is probably the best overall high-end film for just general use. Superia Xtra 400 is very nice. I would recommend it quite a bit. It is probably my favorite saturated cheaper film. It's not super cheap. It's still a class above C200 and ColorPlus. This ranks in about the same as Kodak Ultramax and Kodak Gold, I think. I would say this is the most sharp, like I said, this is the most saturated of the three. But if you want something that's a little bit more neutral, you could go for Kodak Gold, which I don't have here, but it is a very nice mid-range neutral everything film. And yeah, so for the lowest end, my recommendation is to go with ColorPlus. And right above that, you know, if and like of the same level, if you don't really like ColorPlus or you can't get it, C200 is similar, a little bit greener in my opinion, not as nice, but still definitely quite good. There's no film here that I really dislike. I love almost all the color films I've ever used. Cinestill 800T is the only one that I feel like is a little overpriced and not worth it all the time, but that's just because of how I shoot things. I will try out Cinestill 50D, and when I do, I will have a full review for it. But as things go, yeah. Oh, sorry, I forgot the Lomochrome Purple. It's a really fun film. If you want to just try out something that's got some wacky effects, this is it. If you're looking for a way to get into film photography but you don't really know how to go about it, if it's daunting, it can be daunting. If you don't want to worry about manual, my recommendation is to go for a point and shoot. There's lots out there, especially the ones that take AA batteries. Those are the best kind because AA batteries are cheap and they're everywhere. But at the same time, if you don't want to go through even that much work, you can just get disposable cameras. My recommendation for trying disposable cameras is to try the Kodak FunSaver first. It is, in my opinion, the best disposable that you can buy for color film. Followed closely by the Agfa disposable that you can, it's a little rarer I'm sure, but the FunSaver is everywhere. You can buy them at pharmacies. They're really cool, they're really good, and they've got a nice powerful flash. So it's a good time. But if you do want to go out of your way and get yourself something that will work for a little bit longer, point and shoots are just the best way to start. My favorite way to shoot film is with an SLR, but I also shoot with point and shoots very often. It's just such an easy thing to carry around. They're small, they're light, and they're just, you know, one-click operation. They're just really well done. So I would recommend almost all of them. There's tons out there. Take a look, see what you like. If you need any help, you can always reach out. Gladly help anyone find a camera or decide if a camera is any good. Aside from that, yeah, good talk.